Welcome to Life-Changing Challengers, the podcast where passion meets purpose. I'm Brad Minus, your host, guiding you through stories of transformation and triumph, from endurance feats to overcoming adversity. Our guests defy the limits and inspire action. Ready to ignite your desire and incinerate your barriers? Join us. Your journey to the extraordinary begins now. Welcome back to another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. Really excited today, folks. Got Jo Stone with us today. She is a burnout and life coach for women. She has gone through Fortune 500. She's blazed her trails, and now she's blazing a new trail as a burnout and life coach. And we're going to find out why she became this coach, how she was burnt out herself, and what happened. But first, Jo, how's it going?
Good. Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on board. So, Jo, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Where'd you grow up, and what was it like to be Jo as a kid?
Yeah. So if you couldn't tell from the accent, I'm an Aussie. So I live in Sydney, Australia. Currently winter down here at the moment. I grew up as largely an only child. And so my childhood was an interesting one, which now I can see has shaped so much of who I was. My dad was quite a senior executive in sales and did a lot of traveling. This was the 80s and it wasn't that common to go overseas very much. But because of his work, we also came with him, my mum and I. So I spent my childhood, and I have a lot of family overseas. My dad's English. So I spent my childhood going to Paris and New York and London, and flew unaccompanied at the age of 9 from Sydney to Hawaii by myself to go and meet my parents at the end of their week-long kind of sales extravaganza that my dad used to host back in the days when corporates had big budgets and used to fly everybody around the world all the time. So that, I think, being an only child and very much being around adults a lot, I was the one kid at the gala dinner talking to adults, and it had a really big impact because I still remember when I first went into corporate, a lot of my friends would say, oh my gosh, it's the CEO or it's the chairman, and they would start shaking in their boots. But I grew up around the CEO and the chairman and the head of sales and the head of this. And I just knew that was Phil, who wore stupid jumpers with his kids and did a good Cookie Monster impersonation. So therefore, I've always had this really interesting relationship with authority because I saw the other side and I'd say, but he's just dad. He's an idiot. What are you afraid of him for? So that was very much a tenet of my childhood. Lots of traveling, which was wonderful to be able to see lots of the world, and it planted seeds for later on in life. And lots of hanging out with adults, lots of being very responsible, but also very high expectations of myself and others, always having, never being able to be silly, always having to be sensible, and being that sort of good girl conditioning and programming, which I and many other women have, which became a big feature later on in life.
I am an only child as well. My dad didn't fly all over the place, but he was a business person. He was an entrepreneur. He was a real estate agent. He did a lot of different things. And of course, in my life, I ended up doing a lot of different things as well. I was given that public persona. Brad, you're in public now. You know what we do when we're in public, right? When you go home and you throw a fit, they're like, okay, fine, you throw a fit because you're at home. It's not the public persona, it's the private one. But when you were I was in restaurants at the age of 3. I was ordering steak and lobster at the age of 6. And people were like, he's eating steak and lobster? And I'm like, they're like, yeah, he loves it. And meanwhile, their kids are ordering chicken McNuggets. So yeah. And then I couldn't understand. What you want those little things when you got a freaking thick, juicy steak? I don't understand. Obviously, you followed in Dad's footsteps.
I did. So I went from school to university and then went into the corporate world. I did actually do a stint overseas. I went overseas for 3 years, did lots of traveling, enjoyed living out of a backpack for 6 months. And then I'd go to London and work for 6 months until I had enough money, and I'd quit my job. And then I'd go traveling for 6 months until the money ran out. And then I'd go back to London and get another job. So that was a beautiful period of freedom and doing all kinds of crazy things, meeting all kinds of wonderful people, and just really living large, and with traveling being a huge component of that.
Wow. I've never heard anybody do that before. I mean, I've heard it the first time, Like they'll go
Mm.
work, get enough, go travel, and then they start their life. You know what I mean? Yes, I've heard of nomads that are doing it, that are kind of doing it that way. But that's interesting that you did it. And how long were you back and forth for?
It was 3 years I was gone from Australia. And it's funny, my husband, and well, he was now my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time. We often, it's very common for Australians to go to England. It used to be a rite of passage. And I have a British passport because I have an English father, so getting work wasn't a problem for me. And we were very strategic and calculating with our roles over there. My friends are working in pubs, earning £3 an hour, and I went and worked in banking and did all kinds of boring jobs, but I was getting £12 an hour. So I was earning 4 times what my friends were earning, which really shortened the amount of time that we had to actually work before we then went traveling. But yeah, we traveled all over Europe. We spent 5 months in Africa. We spent a lot of time in Asia, spent some time in the US and Canada. So really saw the world and got to live it up. I mean, we roughed it $1 a night in some places in Asia. This US going back 20, 30 years now. But, we'd splurge sometimes and spend $2 and get hot water for a night to have a shower. We really stretched the money as far as we could because the longer the money lasted, the less we had to worry about going back to work. So there was this real incentive. We had time and not a lot of money. So there was a 2-hour speedboat going from the Thai border into central Laos in Asia. And rather than take the 2-hour speedboat that cost 4 times as much, we took the 2-day slow boat that got the goats on it and then dropped off the rice at the village and had hard wooden benches. But we had the time. We spent $2 instead of $8 and spent 2 days hanging out with locals, eating rice on this tiny slow boat going between remote villages. So that was a different way of living, right? Where it's all about the experience. It's all about being present in the moment, not really having any plans, not knowing where you're going in 3 days. You just go to a place. When you're bored of it, you move on. So it was a beautiful way as someone who had always been very organized and project planned and was, when I came back to reality, it was lovely to live in a completely different way.
Wow, man, I don't know what people would kill to have experiences like that. But here in America, it's just, to get that kind of money, to hold on to it, and to be able to put it away it's rough. It's tough. It's tough out here. You know what I mean? Unless you're really making money, and then you don't have the confidence to, hey, I'm going to put all this money away for 6 months and then I'm going to go travel for 6 months. That when they come back, that they'll actually get another job. Real quick question is, what did you study in university?
I did a business degree majoring in marketing and international business. And then later on, I went back and did a master's as well.
In MBA?
Master's of Business.
Okay. Yep.
I'm marketing.
I don't have the first one, but I do have the second one. So I do have a master's of business administration with an emphasis in IT management. So so I did the same thing. That's amazing. What was the turning point where it was, all right, now it's time to all right, now I'm going to dig in, get into the Fortune 500 and make a name for myself? Or maybe that wasn't your plan. What was your plan?
Well, my plan was I was gone for 3 years. It was probably time to come home and start more of a career because I was just getting any job that I could while I was overseas. I was working in banking or doing very boring jobs that were beneath me. And I was always very ambitious. So it was time for me now to come back and actually use my degree and use my brain in a different way. So I decided to come home, and then I ended up getting a marketing job in travel. It was my way of keeping a foot in the world of travel that I'd been in for a few years, but it was doing marketing. And so it was this beautiful opportunity to blend both worlds and soften the re-entry back into normal life. So my boyfriend and I then moved out of home. We got an apartment. And then I guess I started the ascent and jumped pretty quickly. I went from, it was pretty much 18 months to 2 years in jobs. And then I moved up, went very quickly. By 30, I was a head of marketing. That was sort of 7 years from entry level to managing a team. And then I got Trans-Tasman roles. And then my goal was to always become a chief, to get a chief in my title, to be in the C-suite, as we say. And so I was 32 with 2 young children and got my first chief marketing officer role. And that was in a listed company, and it was Asia Pacific. I ticked the boxes. I was like, I'm in a listed company, US listed global company. I have an Asia Pacific role, which is regional, staff in 5 countries, big team, big budget. And then I also had a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old at that.
Wow. CMO. Oh, well, you were better than that, but I think it was Working Girl. Melanie Griffith was the one that kind of like worked her way up, but she was faking it. But the Sigourney Weaver's, Sigourney Weaver, she was top, she's young, she's had a kid, blah, 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 but there you were all the way at the top. Yeah, no, I get it. Wow. That's absolutely amazing. Then the fact that you had 2 kids along with that and you had staff in 5 countries, were you traveling for the job as well?
I was. So before that job, I had a job that was Australia, New Zealand, and I was in New Zealand every 6 weeks. And that was when so it's traveling internationally. It's a 3-hour flight. And so, but I actually didn't mind that because my husband was working part-time at that point in time. We have quite generous parental leave here in Australia. So I had 9 months off with my first, and then I had 7 months off with my second. My husband then took 3 to 6 months off. He actually got 3 months paid parental leave as the father. He could take that time off, and he then went back part-time and I went back full-time. So we've from the moment we had our kids, we've flipped traditional gender roles. He's always been parent 1 on the call sheet for daycare or school, and I'm always parent 2. Never mind the fact that they still call me, which bugs me no end, but that's another story. So I was traveling every 6 weeks to New Zealand then, and I actually used to love it because when I was home, I was a mum and I was up with the teething and the toddler and the screaming, and then I would get the 6 a.m. flight out of Sydney, so I'd be up at 4. I would, get to New Zealand. It would be 2 really hardcore days, and then I would fly home, get home late the next night. But I only had to worry about myself. I would stay in a hotel room. I was running quite large events across New Zealand, so often traveling within New Zealand. But I just got to worry about myself and wake up and not scrape rice bubbles off my suit jacket or, be out walking out the door and then get chucked on and have to change again. Be really freeing, even just to be on a plane and be uncontactable for 3 hours. So yes, I would come back tired, but I really enjoyed that respite. And it made me want to then come home and actually be with my family, as opposed to I'm not meant to be a stay-at-home mum. I don't enjoy being around my family 24/7. I love them more than anything, but I also love leaving them and coming back to them.
Right.
I had someone share this beautiful law of diminishing returns when it comes to parenthood for some people, and a lot of women are shamed for this. And that is, my favorite hour of the day can be the first hour that I see my kids when they come home from school or whatever else. And then the second hour is great, but a bit less awesome. By the time you get to the 4th hour, I'm like, oh my God, I don't just want to sit here and watch you play Barbies, especially when they were younger. Recognizing that I'm at my best when I see them for shorter periods of time, as opposed to being home permanently for, 12 hours a day. That's not me at my best. And it took a lot for me to actually own what makes me a better mother, what makes me a better wife, what makes me a better human, is to do something different than perhaps what a lot of others do, and even what my mother thought I should do.
Yeah, you're right. People are kind of shamed for, oh, you don't want to be around your kids. I have a friend, and I had somebody that I trained with, and she had 3 kids. And she says, life doesn't stop because you have kids, and you can't stop your growth because you have kids. You've got to make concessions. And here's where it became a little controversial is that she said they don't have to run your life. And I think that's where some people started to get a little bit, well, wait a second. No. They're the first end all be all of how you live. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't mean that my growth stops. And the interesting part was one that for all the people that said, well, that's not the right attitude to have. Your kid should be your everything. And she's like, no, they don't. I have a life too. All 3 kids got scholarships to private high schools in the area. The one that just went to college, D1 athlete, straight A's, honor roll, he 4.5 weighted GPA, and the whole bit. So, you know what? They did something right. I imagine your kids probably became a little bit more independent.
Yeah. Well, to me, the best thing for my kids is to have a happy, healthy mother. That looks different for everyone because I now doing what I do, I've got lots of friends and I've worked with lots of clients who have done what they thought was the right thing to do and either stayed home or gone part-time because they feel that they should want to be around their kids. And they are far less present. They are grumpy as anything. They're irritable. They're simmering with resentment and animosity. You're physically present, but you are emotionally absent. And I think that can be far more damaging when you're somewhere out of obligation or because you think it's something that everyone else expects of you and it's not what you truly want. That's actually more damaging than perhaps having less quantity of time, but ensuring that the quantity of time that you do have actually matters, that you're present, that you're engaging. And to me, that's always been by far the most important thing.
And I'm sure you felt the same way about your teens as well. So, well, this was the job that you had prior to this travel company that you're with that you became the CMO for, right?
Well, I was in travel and then I moved into insurance. And that was when I moved very quickly up. I started off in the entry ranks and then I became in insurance companies. I was a head of marketing there. And then I moved to another role as a head of marketing. And then I moved into this global company as a CMO. So I jumped kind of in the space of about 10 years, 3 or 4 roles and just sort of went bang, bang, bang and just moved my way up.
So tell us what a day in the life of a CMO is like in a global insurance company.
This one was a professional services company. So it was, you never know what you're going to get. Being in a global role, we were going through a rebrand at the time. And so my days would often start at 6 a.m. with a call with New York and London because that was the only time that we could do it. So 6 a.m. call and then the family would start to emerge close to 7. And then I would be finishing my call while giving my toddler breakfast or rice bubbles or making toast or whatever I was doing and then getting myself ready for work while hubby then took over. At this point in time, he was a stay-at-home dad. So I was lucky in that I didn't have to, we were doing the daycare run for a while, but he had decided to take some time off at this point. So then I would head out to work. Before I burnt out, my days were, the only way I could describe it was this internal sense of franticness and running. So I would be basically rushing to get ready. And then I would say goodbye to the kids. And then I would feel guilty because I left the house later than I should have. So I'd then almost run to the bus stop because I'd feel like I was now later from work than I should be. Spend the whole bus ride on my phone. I think this was a BlackBerry at this point in time, touching out messages, getting into work. You never know what was going to hit you, whether you had events coming up, you would have a PR crisis, you would have internal pieces, client events. And so no 2 days were the same. You'd have a whole stack of meetings. My days were typically back to back. If I had the odd 1 hour gap, that was pretty rare at that point in time. So just meeting after meeting after meeting. And then would leave the office about 6, come home again, have said that I'll try to get home early to see the kids. But then often I got stuck hanging back at work to get something done or to speak to someone. So I would basically run home, get changed, and then do the evening routine, get the kids to bed, and then basically sit on the couch, pull out my laptop, and then try to catch up on the work that I hadn't been able to do at that point in time. Sometimes then I'd have a 10 o'clock call with the UK. So it was pretty full on. And no surprise, part of the other reason I burnt out is I was running for half marathons. So I was just going to run. So I was also running 3 to 4 times a week on top of everything else.
Okay. You should have led with that. Do you know who you're talking to? Is someone that coaches these people for a living? You should have called me back then. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's fantastic. And because that was my next question, actually. Well, what were you doing for you? That was my next question.
Well,
so that's what you were doing. Half marathons and triathlons. That's great.
Yeah. So exercise has always been a really important part of my life. I did a lot of sport as a kid and dropped it when I was traveling. And basically as a teen, some of that dropped off, particularly when I went to university. The only sport I did was drinking. That was my number one sport. I really lent into the university lifestyle, let's say. Forgot all that. But then as I came back and had kids, decided that it was time to better take care of my body. And I have always been into exercise and sports science and have all kinds of gadgets and things like that to support me. But have always been okay at taking care of myself. So it's always been very goal-driven and achievement-driven. So it was a half marathon. It was about beating my time. It was often about flogging myself and pushing myself. It was never really about recovery. It was never really about actually taking care of my nervous system properly. It was just always more adrenaline, more pushing, more goals, more striving, because that was very much the space that I lived in permanently.
That's what I was about to say. That so that's super interesting that you kept that drive through a sport that you were basically living in. You know what I mean? So a lot of people, they'll exercise and stuff to step away and to clear their head and everything else. And it sounds like for you, you had such a drive in there that you kept that adrenaline, that constant panic, a type of thing going on, because that's your competitive nature, which is probably what made you so successful in business as well. But like I said, most people would step away from that, you know, like the normal person in your case of having 10-hour days would be thinking yoga, you know. But don't get me wrong, I can't do yoga either, and I'm kind of in the same situation. So, but I get it.
It's all changed now. But I mean, I used to love running because it would actually clear my head. It was almost meditative.
Yes.
Because I was only ever thinking about my steps or how my foot was landing or the scenery. It became quite meditative. And I think that was the one thing that kept me sane throughout all of that time.
Excellent. Okay. Much better. I feel better about it now. Because it's like the way you were talking, I was like, oh my God, this girl's in this frantic, manic like thing going crazy at work, and she's driven and she's going, and then all of a sudden she's got to hit her times. But no, I'm glad to hear that's what I tell my people. I'm like, yeah, those aerobic runs. Yeah, you think about anything but running, or the opposite, stay in the moment, completely in the moment. Listen to your breath. Listen to your footfall. Look where your knees are. Is your body hurting? Where is it hurting? What do you need to adjust so that this discomfort goes away? Excellent. Love that. And I feel much better now. So how long did this last? Because this is, I mean, I hear people doing this for years, decades even. How long did this kind of like this schedule last?
So it was probably when I checked myself into hospital thinking that I was having an autoimmune attack, that I went, something has to change. So thinking that I had an incurable autoimmune disease, I suddenly started having all kinds of pins and needles down my right arm. I had a friend who had MS. I was like, oh my God, I'm having an MS attack. I had some lesions in my brain and a few other things. And I think it was just everything caught up with me in terms of the cortisol. And because I can push my body, I'm sort of hypermobile, so I don't feel a lot of pain. I can cope on 4 hours sleep. Like I used to tell myself a story, I could cope on 4 hours sleep. So I can push my physicality a really long way before I break. I've been blessed with a good immune system and a good capacity that way. But eventually it always catches up with you. And so it was in hospital that I've gone, And part of the unraveling of that was also the decision shortly after that to sell our house. So this was 2017. So I was 37. I'd been going full pelt from, 23, let's say in the corporate world up until that point. So that's a good decade or more. And that was when the wake up call hit. I'd been having little niggles of, hang on a second, there has to be more than this. I've got everything that I ever wanted. And by this point in time, when I had the CMO role, I also had the 2 kids. I just built a house from scratch, which was part of my dream. So I'd bought the dream block. I built the house. So I had the house. I had the job. I was on a not-for-profit board, which was one of my other career goals, was to start my non-executive director career. I was on the daycare committee. I was doing all of these things, and I still wasn't happy. There was something missing. There was this emptiness inside. And it was only when I got to this point of going, oh my God, I've got everything I ever wanted. And the irony was, around this time, before my husband and I had got married, we sat down and wrote we've called it a life plan on an Excel spreadsheet. We sat down one time. I'd heard this thing about manifesting. And I went, I wonder what would happen if we just wrote down what we think we're going to do in our life. And we had this spreadsheet from, I think we were engaged at this point in time. So this was 2007 before we got married, and put everything down and said, okay, we know we're going to get married next year. We'll probably have a kid maybe around here. And I knew I wanted two as an only child. I'm not just going to have one. So I had to have two kids. So the second one probably around there. Maybe we'll buy a house here. We'll get a second car here. And the crazy thing was I then forgot about this spreadsheet. And 10 years later, when I was about to throw out an old laptop, booted it up and went, what's in here? I found the spreadsheet that we wrote once and never looked at again. Every single thing on that spreadsheet happened within 3 months.
Wow.
First kid, second kid, buying a new car, building a house, which were literally just like dates plucked out of thin air with no logic to them. And they all happened within 3 months. That is insane.
Perfect case study for manifestation.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And the power of couple manifestation. Maybe you had, you guys were feeding each other, But I do have friends that have podcasts that are on manifestation. So I do have listened to some episodes. That's amazing. So you checked yourself into the hospital because you were feeling tingling. You thought you were having, you said you autoimmune. At tingling, usually people start to thinking of a heart attack.
It was consistent. It was almost like a numb tingling, like you've had your hand in ice for too long. That was going on for days and days and didn't go away. And I had done a bit of research and spoke to some friends and good old Dr. Google and just went, hey, this could be something quite serious, and couldn't get in to see a doctor. And thought, you know what, the only way I'm going to get answers, it just got worse and worse and worse, was, okay, I'm just going to check myself into hospital and I'm just going to lie here until someone comes and sees me. So I lay in hospital for 2.5 days until I finally got the neurologist rather than waiting 8 weeks. And spent a couple of days in hospital and then essentially got told I was about 2 millimeters away from a lesion size perspective from a diagnosis. So I was very much in a watch and wait. We're not going to put you on medication yet, but you're going to come back in 3 months and you're going to have these scans because my brain looked like an 8-year-old brain in terms of all the lesions that I had in a particular area. And they're like, this is not conducive of an otherwise healthy 30-something-year-old. This is very, very abnormal. So I went on kind of high alert to, oh God, I need to start doing something different. I need to better manage my stress. And the thing is, I knew I was stressed, but I had normalized it so much that I didn't realize just how stressed my body was. I didn't realize how much I was clenching my jaw or my shoulders were up or I was holding my breath, because it had become my entire normal. Franticness of being behind and running was just coded into my nervous system. So it took a lot for me to go, all right, I need to do something different. I need to learn about something else. And that's when I started diving a little more into self-help and what are other ways to become unstressed, and found meditation. And then I guess that began what is now a lifelong journey of self-awareness and an exploration of what do I want, what do I need, and how do I construct my life in a way that gets me that, instead of what I think I should have or what society tells me I should have.
So that's a journey that you went on before you went back?
So this was all after I'd had my 2 kids and I was in the house that I'd built and I was the CMO.
You had mentioned that you went to the hospital. They said they found the lesions and then they said, you need to go home. We need to see you back here in 3 months.
3 months. So then I dove into self-help and what else do I need to do for myself? And that sort of started my journey. And then I went back after 3 months and I said, okay, things look like they're shrinking. Okay, it looks like we're going in the right direction. All right, again, come back in 3 months, come back in 3 months. And over the course of 2 years, I had a lesion, which is sort of a spot in your brain that was, I think it was 20 millimeters, so 22 centimeters. And they said that I would have it for life. And when I went back about 2.5 years later, it was gone.
Nice.
I said, what did you do? And I was like, well, a whole stack of self-help stuff and visualization and taking better care of myself and managing my stress, and made a whole heap of changes, sold my house, did all these things, blew up my life basically. And I'm like, okay, well, that lesion's gone. And that doesn't normally happen. So what on earth? What on earth have you done? So I confused a lot of the doctors who, managed to do things that were supposedly impossible. That seems to be what I'm good at.
Yeah. So that's incredible that you were able to, like, those lesions don't go away. And you were through holistic means, you were able to calm your central nervous system down to probably release some more oxytocin and serotonin that you were missing before. So that's amazing. What did you do about your job at this point? You're this big, high-powered executive. What did you do after the first incident?
Yeah, so this really set me on a path of reestablishing what actually do I want in life. And I've achieved everything that I thought I wanted at the ripe old age of mid-30s. I don't know if I want to do this for another 30 years. This is not what I want. And the Australian housing market at that time was going a little bit crazy. My husband and I had been in our dream house for 18 months. This was the forever house. We weren't going to, this was the house that the grandkids were going to come in. We'd made decisions about what we did based on it being a very long-term investment. And my husband turned to me and he said, what if we sold the house? Prices around here are going nuts. And I said, but this is the forever house. But we were trapped in this cycle of I couldn't leave my job. He couldn't leave his job because we had such a big mortgage. My husband was having all kinds of mental health problems. He didn't want to be at his job anymore. I was struggling to find a job that would pay me what I was paid with the conditions that I had. So I felt very, very trapped. One day he said, let's just sell the house. And it forced this whole huge stack of dominoes to fall because I realized that so much of my identity was based on being the one who was the CMO, who had the new house, who could invite people over and entertain and show off my nice water feature and my chickens and my pool. And so all of my sense of self was attached to external benchmarks of achievement and success. But it wasn't what made me happy. So I went on this really quite brutal process of reestablishing what actually makes me happy, what do I actually want. And through that journey of journaling, lots of courses and programs, I discovered that I actually valued freedom more than I valued appearances. And so we made the very quite fast decision to sell the house. We didn't really tell anyone. We just stuck it up online and everyone thought we were nuts. We had an intervention from parents who said, you can't do this. A lot of friends thought we were crazy because we essentially decided to tap out of the race with the Joneses. We just said, we're not going to play this game anymore. And Sydney is a very, very expensive place to live. House prices are insane. And we said, all right, well, what happens if we downsize? Everyone was upsizing at that point in time. We had 2 little kids. Everyone was getting more space. But we said, all right, well, let's move further out of the city and let's downsize. Let's reduce the mortgage. And from that point then, once we made that decision and we sold the house with nothing to go to, mind you, where are you going to buy? We'll make it work. We'll find somewhere. It'll all work out. We'll sort it out. We just had to have faith. But it was this journey of stepping into the mess and the unknown, one step at a time. And as the color-coded project manager who loved everything laid out, give me the steps, give me the timelines, I'll give you my traffic lighted risk register for what am I? We just had to say, all right, we're going to see if we sell. And only once we sold did we then work out what the next step was. And so we had to lean into the mess, lean into the uncertainty, and basically then spent the dominoes fell quite quickly, 3 months. So we sold the house. We ended up moving in with my parents for a bit, ended up buying another house further out of town that was much smaller. I then quit my job because we had a much lower mortgage. So I could then have the freedom to start my own business, which is something that I'd always wanted to do. My husband could then quit his job and be a stay-at-home dad again and work on his health. So all these dominoes then started to fall really quickly, which was, I guess, the start of everything that we have now. But it was quite a brutal ego death, and I had to reevaluate everything that I thought I wanted, everything that society said that I should and shouldn't have. It was a really confronting time.
Interesting. So I'm thinking that you said that the housing market was going crazy, so that when you got a decent amount of equity out of your house because of the upswing in the market.
Yeah.
Great.
So we were able to, we got more after 18 months than we thought we would get after 7 to 10 years.
Beautiful.
So we just thought, all right, let's take the money. And then we downsized and bought a cheaper house. So the deal was I want a mortgage small enough that I can drive an Uber and then I'll be able to pay the mortgage. No mortgage would have been great, but it was a smaller mortgage, much more easy to manage with so much more freedom and flexibility.
Love it. Love it. So you mentioned that you always wanted to start a business. And is that how you created, here's the plug, the Balance Institute?
Well, it took a little while to get there. Mm-hmm. And I had no intentions of becoming a life coach at all. It was the universe just kept hitting me and hitting me and hitting me and saying, go this way. I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. It's like, that's going to fail. Go this way. No, I'm not qualified to do that. Who am I to do that? Let me try this. That's going to fail. It just kept smacking me in the face. So it took me 12 months of trying other things, of doing some consulting, of trying to get other scalable online programs up in other niches before eventually I went, okay, well, maybe I am someone who can actually do this and be a coach, because I didn't see myself as a coach. I was a consultant. I was corporate. I was used to a navy suit and black patent heels. Give me a boardroom and Post-it notes and 100 people, and I'm in my element. The thought of talking to people about their lives and being an agony aunt, I thought life coaches wore floral dresses and lived in hippie communes and fumped about in sunflower fields. I was a serious corporate person. I couldn't be one of those. So it took a lot for me to really decide on what my new identity was and who I wanted to become and how I wanted to do things that broke the status quo at the time.
That's incredible. I mean, just the idea that you had no intention of being this coach, and now you have a business that thrives on it.
Yeah. And it thrives on it because I had to decide that I was going to share my journey, that I was going to share what I'd overcome and how I used to live and how I used to feel, because it was after we'd sold the house and moved and I was doing some consulting. I had a bunch of coffees. I was networking and doing all the things that you do as a consultant. And it was one particular week that I had about 6 or 7 coffees with different people in my network because I was in the city. And every single conversation went to, how are you doing this? You've got 2 young kids. I know you sold your house. You're running, you seem to be fit. Everyone else is stressed to the nines. Everyone else is crazy. How are you okay? And that was when I was able to start sharing, well, I've learned this, and I've learned this about part of my upbringing that gave me this, and I inherited this belief from my father that wasn't good, so I had to ditch it. And I was starting to share everything I learned on my personal growth journey. And one day went, I wonder if someone would pay for that. And the rest is history. Turns out they would pay for my advice. Turns out I did have something to add. Turns out I can be a great coach. And I was able to put reality and a whole lot of heart and knowing into what I was teaching, because there was a gap in the market. Women in corporate didn't want to go to a life coach who had never worked in corporate, who would say things like, turn the laptop off at 5, you just need to say no. Like, I can't say no. My team in Hong Kong are waiting for an answer. I actually came with real life examples of what that world is like, what the politics is like. I went through some horrific mergers and acquisitions. I had baptism of fire in my time in corporate. So I was able to talk to a lot of situations. And that was what people wanted, was someone who could bridge the world of personal development, but also put it in language that a busy woman who's ambitious and is working in corporate can also understand.
Perfect. So you have this program business. It's called the Balance Institute, where you are helping women with burnout and where to go from there. And you have several programs. I love that. If you guys happen to check out her website, balanceinstitute.com, and you have a podcast.
I do.
Oh, how long have you had this?
This is where 106, 7, 8 episodes in now, and we're just about to cross, I think, 60,000 downloads.
Beautiful. All right. So yeah, I see 106. By the way, You're going to be number 113.
Thank you.
Welcome. So you're going to be number 113. Actually, it's season 5, episode 13, but it's number 113. I do in a 25 episode season, just to break things up a little bit, shake it up a little bit. So it's Yeah. I don't know if it's working, but the way I've been doing it. So yeah, that's great. We're about the same. This has only been a year, but it's pretty much about the same. It's been working out really, really well.
Yeah.
So you are Balance and Beyond podcast, and she's on Apple and Spotify. And I imagine you're probably on some of the other directories too. We tend to be on iHeart and all the other stuff. You're on the biggest ones. I'm totally impressed. And I love the fact that you were a success, realized that being a success in an industry could actually not be a success in your own life as far as your health goes, and then be able to turn that whole thing around, and from brain lesions to, success and happiness and be the ability to help others, which is what I am all about, and that's why you're on the show. That's why I have everybody else on the show, is because your experiences help out everybody else. So I definitely appreciate that. So yes. So check her out at balanceinstitute.com. and check out Balance and Beyond podcast. Are you on socials?
Yes. So my handles are at Better Balance Institute on Instagram, although also on LinkedIn under Joe Stone. You'll find me there as well.
Okay.
Even my audience tend to do a lot more on LinkedIn these days than necessarily Instagram.
I would imagine that's a be so. They use Instagram as their step away.
Yes.
Let me check my Instagram and kind of like get away for a minute. And then I'll go back to my LinkedIn and go back to work. Okay. LinkedIn, Instagram, we're going to have all that linked in the show notes. We're going to have her podcast linked in the show notes. You can book a call with her and do a one-on-one and see which of her programs are right for you. So please, check out balanceinstitute.com and Joe Stone. And book a call, listen to the podcast, and see if she might be right for you. If you are watching on YouTube, that's Life Changing Challengers. If you're watching Life Changing Challengers on YouTube, please go ahead and hit that like button, that subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you always know when we're dropping a new episode. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. So Joe, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experiences with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you in the next one. Well, that wraps up another episode of Life Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Minus, saying thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. If today's stories inspired you, please take a moment to review, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create an even bigger impact. Remember, every challenge is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep pushing, keep challenging, and never stop pursuing your extraordinary.